Welcome to Who We Are. I'm your host, Maya Kalaria. Decolonizing the power of narrative, Who We Are centers the voices of the global majority, people who have experienced colonial harm and marginalization. Those who may have lost connection to their cultures, lands, ancestral heritage, food, spiritualities, languages, and much more through colonization, and are now reclaiming their connection to their roots. This is a living archive for stories of struggle, hope, and healing from systems of oppression. It focuses not on what we do, but on who we are, a bridge between the legacy of our ancestors and those who come after us. So let us bear sacred witness to the stories that have silently lived inside our bodies. Stories that long to be told and heard. This is who we are. Hannah, thank you so much for joining us on Who We Are, the podcast today. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I think today's conversation is going to be really deep, really interesting, very juicy, and just very, maybe surprising at times, who knows? But it's going to be absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to start by asking you about the lands and the people that you come from. So can you share a bit more about where your ancestors are from, where your parents are from, and where you were born?
Yeah. So I'm currently calling in from Bandung, currently at the base of the volcano of Tangkuban Perahu. And Bandung is West Java in Indonesia, which is kind of one of the largest archipelagos in the world. We also have the fourth largest population in the world. We have a lot of Indonesians. But yeah, I was born in Bandung. I was born and raised here in my childhood, and then I spent my teenagehood in the UK. I am of mixed race heritage. My dad is Sundanese, so this is in this area, and my mum is English. She's a white-bodied Londoner, through and through. And so, yeah, these lands are very alive, very vibrant, and it's been a whole kind of process in terms of navigating what mixed raceness means, or what mixedness means generally, especially being kind of a child of the colonizer, child of empire, and then child of the colonized, and yet still moving through those processes. But I've returned back to Indonesia in the last 4 years, after being away for over 20 years. So it's really beautiful to be back, and I have a lot of family here. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be back here on this soil, for sure.
Yeah. I'm very curious as to know what it was like to come back after 20 years of not being here. What was it like for you? What were the challenges? What were the beautiful parts of that, and anything in between?
Yeah, I think being a teenager, being brought up in a white-dominated society, I've always kind of been confronted with my brownness and my Asianness. It's always something that's very present. I was bullied quite a lot for it. I used to speak Indonesian. Indonesian is my mother tongue. And that kind of got bullied out of me when I was younger. And so I thought before I came here, I had a really good grasp on what it meant to be brown or to be Asian, because that's something that I've had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that's kind of the beautiful violence of racism, because it kind of completely flattened my identity. And coming back to Indonesia, it's so wildly diverse. There are so many different languages. There are so many different foods and music, and different faith practices and indigenous practices. There are those that are intertwined with Christianity. There are those that are intertwined with Islam. And there's those intertwined with Hinduism. And it's such a mix. And I think one of the things that was so confronting was that having been, seeing Indonesia from an outside lens in my teenagehood and early adulthood, I completely flattened the country, right? Because my identity was also completely flattened, and it was quite overwhelming at first, because I was like, whoa, there's so much, and it's so beautiful. And so it's taken a minute to come into, I guess, reclaiming those parts of myself and actually allowing myself to be a little bit more full, rather than being this kind of flat identity. And it's been really, really a beautiful journey. One of which is kind of remembering my language. And in West Java particularly, there's a language called Sundanese, because we're in the Sunda area. So there's the national language, which not everyone speaks due to access and education, but that was kind of introduced in the 1960s. But that's a national language. And then there's each kind of area has its own language. And I'm in the process of remembering, which is also, a little bit griefy, because it's kind of sad to be stumbling along these kind of words and sounds, but it's also really like a beautiful recollection. And it just feels like I'm kind of putting things back on the shelf that were kind of first like wiped off. It's definitely a process, but it's been on the whole quite humbling, and I think it has given me an opportunity to explore who I am broader than what I've been racialized into. And I'm really grateful for that.
That flattening is a very powerful term, because you feel it. And I think anyone who's listening to this, including myself, who's listening to you speak, any of those of us who have lived in the Western world in a black or brown body knows that flattening. We know it in our bones. Like, we absolutely know, going from like 3D to 1D, being steamrolled over by the dominant racist culture, the white supremacist culture, and having to erase or very deeply hide those parts of ourselves. And it sounds like those parts are now, like those parts that were pushed underground, are now kind of like a bird, like they're kind of blooming upwards again through the soil, but it takes a bit of time and safety and all of those aspects that one needs to flourish.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's been most rewarding for me is, I guess our sense of personality, right? I mean, I'm a little bit of I can stand outside of myself quite a lot. And so my sense of personality as well, being in a traumatized body or being in a brown body, you can kind of watch yourself and be an observer of your own kind of process. And one of the things that's been most liberating or rewarding is having different versions of myself exist, who I haven't met before. And like, I don't know, showing up in spaces and moving my body in spaces. And there are various levels of comfort and discomfort, of familiarity and unfamiliarity. There are moments when it also even feels like I'm there with my family doing family things, and I feel like I'm appropriating, because I'm like, wait a minute, like, this isn't mine, but it actually is. So you have to go through this process of kind of appropriating it before it feels appropriate. And I think that's one of the things that I really, it's really, really rewarding. I think the other piece is around sound, and music and rhythm, and being able to, I don't know if you've heard any traditional Indonesian music, but it's called gamelan, and the way that the rhythms move is so different, and every island has its own, and it just runs in my blood. It's so joyful to hear and enlivening, and it's just versions of myself that I never knew existed. I was like, oh, curious, this is coming back. It's nice. I'm meeting different versions of myself.
It sounds like as well like that kind of the remembering that's very inherent in our bones, and goes back like to ancient times, as in the connection you have with the soil of that land, you know, that's beyond you, that's kind of like so ancient, so old, down the lineage, you know. And like when you hear that music, it awakens that as well. And I totally hear you around that, because the music as well, that is also ancient, as in like it obviously must have gone through iterations, but like it is a reflection of the heartbeat of the people of the land and the land itself, and their connection, their conversation as well. And the animals come into it, and the mimicry of like the different rhythms of the animals and the plants and the trees. And it's very, from what I understand of like very traditional music, it's very animistic in some ways, like the life force is
story.
Very much
it's all story. It's deep archives, it's documenting everything that's going on. It's like, it's a deep witnessing of the world around you, and it's a deep reflection. And I think that that's something that is so nuanced. And a lot of the instruments as well, like, are from natural materials that are found here, yes. Right? It's all very of the earth. And so, it's been really joyful, and at times, of course, clumsy and awkward, but mostly joyful.
It's part of the process.
Yeah.
But I love that you've said it's story, because like one of the other aspects of traditional culture is oral storytelling and myths and music, because a lot of cultures did not have like written like ancient written scriptures or texts. I mean, some do, some don't, because like that wasn't it wasn't seen as like the most important thing, as long as the oral traditions were passed down orally. So I wonder, like, did you when you were like growing up, whether it was in Indonesia or whether it was in the UK or anywhere else that you were, did you have any of those stories passed down to you from like Javanese mythology, Indonesian mythology as a whole? Like, did anything get passed down to you?
Yeah, it's curious that you asked that. So the reason that I ended up in Indonesia, or how I came to being, was because my mum moved from the UK to Indonesia to study music, actually. And so she did her PhD in Javanese gamelan. And gamelan it's a huge orchestral kind of with multiple pieces and multiple people, and everyone's playing with each other. And there are also some really beautiful vocal accompanist for it. And my grandmother was actually one of the singers. And so my grandmother, so my dad's mum, ended up matching my mum with her son. So that's kind of how that happened. My mum was actually best friends with my grandma, and then my grandma was like, if you like me, you might like my son.
You'll love my son.
I made him, you know. So that's kind of, music has always been at the foundation of our connection with this part of the world. And gamelan is historically and traditionally accompanying wayang. And wayang is puppetry. So there's wayang golek, which is the kind of wooden puppets, and then there's wayang kulit, which is the kind of kulit meaning skin. It was kind of more like shadow puppets. And these wayang performances they kind of traditionally they start at like midnight and they go on through the night, and it's all social commentary intertwined with ancient myth. And so there's like little bits of satire, there are little bits of comedy, there's music, and then there's a dalang who is the main puppeteer. And my mum, because she was studying gamelan, she became really, really good friends with the dalangs, the very famous dalangs here in Sunda, here in Bandung. And it's just a really big part. And so all of these stories were deeply animated for us when we were kids, because we had the voice of the dalang, we had the songs and the singers and the whole music, and it was just and we used to watch them all the way through the night. It would be the thing that we fall asleep to, you know. And it's really funny. Like, it's also so comedic, because social commentary is not necessarily something that is welcomed here. Right. And so Indonesians have gotten really creative in how to do that in their art, and mostly it's through literature or poetry, but it's also through their wayang. And yeah, it becomes like quite a responsibility to be that storyteller, because you allow opportunities for people to process some of the things that are moving within the country in amongst the narrative of myth and legend. So yeah, it's been a big thread in terms of my connection to this space, yeah.
Wow. The surprising element has come in already. Wow, okay. It sounds like your mother's journey with Indonesia has been really in depth, and it sounds to me like very respectful in the sense of like really taking the time. Like, I mean, a PhD is no small thing, and it sounds like it was very specialized. Like, it's very, very particular. Like, it's not the usual thing that someone, I would imagine, from this country that I speak from England would pick. It's a very specialized topic, and also, you know, one does have to move to do it. So it takes a lot of conviction and courage as well. And we will get to this. We will get to this. But, you know, at the moment, a lot of people are moving to Indonesia, especially Bali, for you know, many other reasons that are not respectful and that are to appropriate and extract. But it sounds like with your mum, it was very much about kind of having relationships with the local community and the people. The fact that she was best friends with your grandma, like, that's really beautiful. And she was like taking the time to learn the language through the music of your people. And so that just sounds much healthier than the usual stories we hear about, like, you know, white people going over to, you know, colonized countries and kind of just extracting and then going back home and forgetting about it.
Yeah, she has a really deep love for this area. And it is very, very obvious. And it's kind of, you can feel the reverberations of that love, like, even now, because I'm showing up and I've been away for 20 years. People knew me when I was a child, and they're still like welcoming me back into their homes. They're still welcoming me into their kind of family gatherings and religious celebrations. They're like, because the love that they cultivated between themselves and my mum was so strong that it's kind of just like waving through me. And I'm really, really benefiting from it, and I'm so grateful. But it's a real testament to who she is and how she interacts with the world. And like, yeah, it is not a path that is well trodden, and she was very kind of the first in a lot of those spaces. And it's hard to be somewhere that you don't understand the language just yet, you don't understand the culture just yet. But yeah, she really committed to it, and I'm so grateful, because actually the love of Indonesia comes more through my mum than it does through my dad. Even though my dad, like, my parents separated when I was younger, that's when I moved. But even though my dad is Indonesian and he's here, it's definitely through my mum that I've kind of learnt to love the culture of it. Yeah.
Once again, super surprising and like in a really lovely way. And I think about parallels I've seen, maybe not quite like how beautiful it is to hear about your mum and how much she loves Indonesia, but when it comes to your dad, I understand that piece because I've seen many people from my community and the Indian community who, including my own father, who has never been to India and never wants to, you know, and that kind of piece about like maybe not loving your culture as much as perhaps someone who comes from an outsider perspective does, because you're in the midst of it and you've experienced things from within the midst of it, which this other person would never have experienced. And so there is that privilege as well of like coming in from an outsider's perspective, compared to like being brought up in it and seeing all the political turmoil and seeing the oppressive systems and the colonial systems at play. It's like, it's very complex and nuanced, isn't it? Like it's very complex.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, Indonesia is a really young country. And my dad was also born in the 60s. And that's kind of when the country also started. So I think that there's also so much that was in upheaval in his childhood that can be so shocking to the system that you kind of lose curiosity. And I think that's the main distinction here, is that like my dad wasn't curious about those kind of things. Actually, he was more interested in moving away and moving out and moving kind of the social mobility that maybe being with a white-bodied person would give him, that maybe like it would be about moving away from Indonesia. And then my mum here, who's like sees it from a very different lens, has come with a huge amount of curiosity and wants to like embed herself into the intricacies of what it means to play this music or to speak this language and to show love and care in a way that is received. And it's like, those two kind of things were like passing ships in the night, because it's a really nuanced conversation for sure.
Yes. And we were saying just before we started recording, I had just learned that, you know, in the 60s, there was a huge amount of bloodshed of the Indonesian people across the board. And your father was born during those times. And that trauma, however old you are, you know, whether you're the baby at the time or a child at the time, like that trauma is there. That trauma is in the land. And it becomes embedded, I think, in the way that you see the world until it's healed. And the lack of curiosity piece, I really hear you as well, because that's how my dad is. And he comes from Uganda. Well, he doesn't come from Uganda. He was born in Uganda. And there was the Idi Amin's coup in 72, and all the Indians had 90 days to leave. And so he's still stuck in the trauma of that, and has not been able to kind of come out of that. And as you said, with the white-bodied person, like seeing that as like a way out, because then he married, his second wife is a white-bodied woman. And so this kind of lack of curiosity that comes from like potentially like experiencing trauma, whether it's secondhand, third hand, first hand, it's really prevalent.
Yeah. I actually do try to make a distinction between historical trauma and intergenerational trauma. And I think that's helpful, like when we're having these conversations, because there are historical trauma being like the stories of our peoples, right? And what we've been through as peoples, as cultures. And something like that. So it was a genocide. There were millions of people killed in 1965. And that's part of our historical narrative. But then there's also a distinction between intergenerational, which is like how it's connected to us, right? And how it impacts us. Because we can have the historical narrative, which is there's sense making and context. And then intergenerational is really helpful because it's like, and what does that mean for me?
Exactly.
And actually Yeah, I know that he's probably going to be like wriggling in his grave when I say this, but my grandfather was actually a general in the Air Force that was part of that whole regime. And so he's a militant, he's a military man. And that was definite, and based in Jakarta, which is a capital city. And that was part of his job. It was part of his role. And being a general is, it's up there. And that ricocheted, like any time that we asked it, it would be off the table. We're not allowed to ask him. He's not around anymore, but we weren't allowed to ask him about that. And whenever it was mentioned, it would be really quickly squashed. And the trauma of that within himself really, he took it out on his kids, and that was really, really rough. And so those are kind of, it's not long ago. It's still very, very present. And my dad is still around, and kind of inheriting the treatment that he got from his dad and passing also that on to us, which kind of led to the separation from in my parents' marriage. But it is so present and unattended to, but it's also still so raw. It is still so raw for people very close to it. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. The intergenerational trauma piece about how does that play out? What does that mean for you? What is the legacy of that in our bodies? It is so powerful, and hearing that part of your family story, it really makes sense. And then the contrast of the experience your father has had compared to the experience your mother has had, and these two views. And once again, before the recording, I was saying to you how I just found out that the cultivation of this idea of, let's just say specifically Bali, but I think like wider parts of Indonesia, was then kind of peddled as this beautiful, magical place of spiritual peace and cultivation. And not that it's not, but these two visions are so deeply and sharply contrasting.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it because so I'm a breath worker, for those that don't know. So I'm a breath worker, and I teach people kind of rooted in decolonial healing. And one of the things that really rings true for me is actually a quote from Dr. Rev Angel Kyodo Williams, who's based in New York. But the quote goes that if it's present in the social body, it is present in our personal body, right? And if it's present in the personal body, then it's present in the social body. And just the simplicity of kind of the chaos and all of that was happening for my dad here, and then a white-bodied person coming into the country being like, everything's so beautiful, oh my goodness, wow, right? That is very present in my body and what I've inherited, but it's also so present on the island of Bali, right? That we have the Balinese there that are really like, it's becoming really unaffordable. There's so much building that is deeply like inconsiderate of any of the natural weather systems or the water systems. Like, I mean, the water table of Bali is already depleted by 80%, and that's probably a statistic from a few years ago. There's so many concrete buildings being built, and there's currently, in the moment right now, there's a huge amount of flooding. And so kind of the local population are really struggling with their general day-to-day livelihood. And yet we still have thousands and thousands and thousands of people going onto that island every month and having the most wonderful time, right? And it is this kind of deep contradiction and like this, the inability to be able to see the nuance of it and allow complexity of it that really rings true for me. And I spent a few years living in Bali as well, and it was yeah, it's really tough to witness, because as an Indonesian, I was living more of a local life, let's say, because I also have family there. I'm not living the life of, folks that are coming in and having their, I don't know, their remote working, nomadic fitness moment. But yeah, there's totally different like parallel lives that you can see. And it's very, very stark, and it's harrowing. It's quite painful to witness, actually.
Yeah. It to me, as an outsider, but someone who has some parallel experiences with India and how people travel there, when I hear you talk about Bali, and even when I look and read things about Bali, to me, it just feels utterly disrespectful, just like utterly disrespectful. And I can completely imagine how that would be very painful to witness. It feels like a fragmentation of the worlds, where there's a reality of what the land has experienced and what the land is continuing to experience, with this continued, firstly, the history of the bloodshed that has happened, that blood is still in the land. It's not been exactly cleaned up there's the reconciliation has not really been complete, and the healing has not been done on a societal level, because it needs to be addressed on a much greater scale. And then like immediately, like these people start like coming in and creating this new fantasy world on top of the bloodshed that's already happened, and through the Dutch colonial and the Japanese, it's like all of this history in the land that's so painful that hasn't been like healed yet. And then there's like this thing just stuck on top, like this kind of glittery, like unicorn type thing. Where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like
drinking protein shakes,
doing retreats, like just living your high vibes life, but at the expense of like the land and the people who have lost so much and continue to lose so much and have never fully recovered from what they've gone through. And the very people that put them through that are like flooding to the land. It's really, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. The dissonance. Yeah, the dissonance is loud. Like I think also just it being kind of this hub of wellness, quote unquote, right? Which also makes it so much more sick. And yes. So like, because it's not just people holidaying and kind of just enjoying the island. There's this pretense of healing on top of it. Yes. There's this there's a pretense of irony, consciousness, of like elevated consciousness, of unity consciousness, of peace consciousness, which is just makes it so sickening. And that's one of the things that I was so ready to leave, because it was crazy making. It was so crazy making. There's no one yet that is really kind of talking about kind of the history of colonization or the role that the people that have chosen to live there have as stewards of the land. It's still very individualistic. It's still very commercial. And I thought, I mean, as a decolonial healing person, I was like kind of interested, being like, okay, I'm in the belly of the beast of the wellness industry. Like, maybe I can do something. And I was like, no, retreat, like back up. Let me get back out of here, because that was too much. And so, maybe I mean, the world has its own ways to teach its lessons. And so that was a big responsibility that I put on my own shoulders. I'm a little serious. I take myself a little bit too seriously sometimes. But yeah, I was like, whoa, okay, I'm going to back up. This is too much.
I don't blame you at all, because I can imagine it's very, like, it's overwhelming. I mean, what's going on there? And you as one person can only do so much. And you can still do a lot from where you're situated, you know. I think
Yeah,
sometimes taking that distance away helps you see things even more clearly, but from a like healthier
for sure.
place, a safer place, because
For sure.
the crazy the crazy making part really, really reverberates with me, because it makes me think of gaslighting. It really makes me think of
Totally.
collective gaslighting, and
Totally.
like,
Yeah.
this is the reality that we're creating for ourselves on the land. We don't care about your reality because that's not convenient for us. We're just going to create our own reality. And guess what? Manifestation, you know, and like,
Mm,
just positive thoughts, and, you know, all that's in the past. And I mean, not that they would even know to say that, because I don't think a lot of people even understand what's happened in the past. But it's like that complete white Western spiritual bypassing that has like plonked itself on the island, as it has in India as well.
yeah. But you know what? It's also like tourism. It becomes a really nuanced and complex conversation because tourism is how many of the people on the island make money now. With so
Yeah.
much land being sold, so many farmers are, like aging out, and young people not wanting to be farmers. There's kind of, and of course, there are kind of the fundamental basic industries, but then there's tourism. There's a huge amount of tourism. And so there's this argument that says, oh, well, if you didn't have tourism, then these people wouldn't have a livelihood, right? And it's kind of it's a bit of a moot point because we create our own kind of systems of care. But yeah, it's really funny sometimes when I hear people talk about how beautiful Bali is, because it's probably because they wake up at 9 and the local Indonesians wake up at 5 and they've already swept. You know, you don't see like where everybody
Yeah.
swept and done all the work to make it beautiful. And then you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, this island is so clean and beautiful. And it's like, yeah, because like 100 people have been working before you've even woken up. And it's all part of the myth making. It's all part of the fantasy. And so it's a really interesting conversation because it's not necessarily like the solution is not necessarily clear.
Yeah.
And I get we're not looking for solutions. We're just kind of naming what's present. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. And when you were speaking, I was thinking about what's hidden, you know, when these people wake up at 9 and the Indonesians have been up since, you know, like the Balinese people have been up since like 5, sweeping the streets, preparing everything, making everything beautiful. It's like, this is the hidden reality that's underneath the reality that you have created, which is a very synthetic reality. And once again, it's kind of the microcosm of like what we were just saying about like the history of the people. It's like the same thing. It's like, the hidden reality is there, but you have to be willing to look at it, and it's not convenient. It's very painful for people. And kind of bringing it back to you, I love that that's a lot of the work that you do. It feels like the two worlds, from my perspective, and I could be wrong, so please do correct me, but it feels like this kind of meeting of the two worlds and the bridging of like, not bridging the two realities in the sense that you live in like the myth of what it is, but like you're very aware of it, and so it's like, and you have to exist in it to some degree, and so it's like, where do these conversations meet? How can we bring people into those conversations? And what you do as a facilitator, as a breathwork facilitator, it's like helping people to move that through the body, like the shock and the trauma of it and the more painful things, because it's not about looking away. It's not about looking away, but it's like, if you're going to look at it, here's some tools to like help us to look at it. And so I wanted to just rewind a little bit to how you started on your decolonial journey. And when did you become conscious of the colonial entity, as it will?
Yeah. I think being mixed race and being brought up by a white-bodied parent, Single parent, low economic status, in council housing, kind of the only Asians on the street and the only Asians in school apart from one other person. I think the constructs of race were already very, very present. And also the idea of immigration for safety or immigration for education was also already very present. And I'm really grateful for my mum in terms of kind of she didn't necessarily lie to us when we were younger, but she didn't tell us the whole truth in the sense of why we moved to the UK, because there were kind of dynamics with my dad that she kind of didn't want to taint and things like that. But part of like one of the kind of like little side reasons was like, oh, well, it's got a good education system here and we can kind of get good education. And then that was really honed in for us in terms of how we can have social mobility was through education. So already as a young person, like race is already very present. Gender is obviously very present. And then education in terms of social mobility and like moving up, because we were in council housing. And then if we could get into a grammar school, then we'll have friends from different backgrounds. And I ended up going to school with some quite wealthy people and then being invited around their houses and being like, oh my God, I didn't know houses could even look like this. And like they'd have things like Ribena. We didn't have Ribena. And things like bagels for breakfast. I was like, whoa, mind is blown. Like some of my best friends in high school ended up being just the people with the most fully stocked kitchens. It was, yeah.
Yeah,
it was a tactical move. Tactical move. And Sky, you know, something like this.
Yeah.
And so that was always very, very present. And I think the most kind of pivotal, there were kind of two pivotal moments when I was at university. The first one was, so I studied at Glasgow University of Glasgow, studying theatre and politics. And there were moments when I submitted my papers, and each time I would get downgraded for my academic language, right? And it was because I didn't use as much academic language as I could. And I was like, but are my ideas good? Right?
Exactly.
Like, and am I clear? Like, do you get my idea? Right? And it was we consistently every year from first year to fourth year, that was the ongoing battle that I had with all of my advisors and supervisors, was this point. And so then this kind of element of literacy and the separation around kind of access to power through literacy. And then you're also listening to the accent that I've like assimilated into, right? My mum doesn't sound like this. My sister doesn't sound like this. My brother doesn't sound like this. They all grew up in the UK. I've assimilated to try and have the most powerful accent that you can have in the UK. It's not my accent, actually. Right? So these are all of these. This is what I say, that I can observe myself from outside of myself. I'm kind of like watching what I'm doing. So that was one pivotal moment where I kind of witnessed, okay, I can move through different social locations and proximity to power with the way that I leverage how power is working, which is how colonialism works, right? So looking at status, looking at education, looking at income. And then, unfortunately, as a young adult, I experienced some sexual violence and sexual abuse. And I was raped. And it was a really deeply disembodying time. I'm actually quite open with this. It's not necessarily like new information here. But this is where I started my breathwork journey, because I was so dead inside and so numb, and I was kind of just moving in this shape and in this form and vessel, but I wasn't really present. And this is where I found breathwork, and it literally, like, without exaggerating, it really brought me back to life. It reminded me that I had cells in my body, that there was electricity in my body, that like whenever I breathed, it nourished, and my body moved every time that I breathed. And it was like a reminder that I wasn't just this like invisible, moving blob. And when I started breathwork, I started to seek out other survivors. So I actually started my breathwork journey in survivor groups. And I think this is like where it became so apparent, because I was like looking for communities, and then I found this community, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many of us. That's amazing. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is terrible. Like, there are so many of us, you know? And it's just like, whoa. And as beautiful as it was to find a community that kind of understood and I could move my breath and body with in a way that I couldn't in other kind of social settings, it was really harrowing to kind of think, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. And it happens a lot, and it happens to many people, and it's happened forever, right? And this is when I started to look at kind of the patterns of rape, actually. This is where it kind of was like, oh my goodness, what are the statistics on this? And it was just like, oh my goodness, like 1 in 3 women. It's just like, okay. And then it's like, well, who are the people that are doing this? And also very limited numbers and research on that. And then there was also this element of, well, what is our relationship to consent and our education around consent and our education around like masculinity and patriarchy and all of these things. So as soon as I started kind of moving through my own healing process around what it means to be a survivor, especially in a woman's body, in a cis woman's body, and in a brown body, and in an Asian body, specifically in this moment, you kind of start looking at those patterns and kind of looking at, okay, actually we live in a rape culture. We live in a culture that objectifies women. We live in a culture that objectifies sex. And we live in a culture that predicates this idea that we are entitled to sex and entitled to this. And so it was kind of like, that was when it kind of split everything open for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a doorway. Your own personal experience, your own lived bodily experience and trauma was a doorway into being like, hang on a fucking second. Like, what? How? Who? Why?
And in as much as I would like to think that I'm special, because I would like to think I'm special, I'm not. We all do. In this case. But I'm not in this case, right? I was like, oh, wait a minute, it's not just me. And it became, it's unsettling and settling in both ways, because the pattern recognition of colonialism was really, really helpful for me to like start making sense of it. I think one of the other things as well was like a lot of the advice that I got given in those spaces was to kind of demonize my perpetrator, the person that did this to me. But they were a friend, and like they were a close friend and a family friend and all of these things. And it was really hard for me to make him a monster in my head. And it didn't make sense. And then as soon as I started kind of looking at the systemic level and on a structural level of what we are conditioned into, and it's not that I'm, of course, never condoning it, but I was able to give him a little bit of grace in terms of like, oh, of course you thought that was okay. Also, just the idea of like, I'm a brown woman, and he had a very flat idea of that I wasn't really a woman, you know, or a person even, because that's what he's been conditioned to think. And it was just, it felt very helpful for me because I could put things into context and then release all of the shame around it that I had, that you generally do when you go through something like this. And you kind of go, oh, okay, this is part of something much bigger. And we're seeing that again and again and again, and more relevant now, as well.
Yeah. I want to kind of ask you more about the rage and the forgiveness part. Not that you've mentioned rage, but I wanted to ask you about how you experience that, if at all, and the forgiveness of those who have wronged you, but also on a larger level when you've been working through your decolonizing journey. Rage and forgiveness are two massive parts, and they dance together. Sometimes they beat each other up. Sometimes one can't even see the other because the other is over the horizon. How has that
Yeah.
been for you, the journey with like rage and forgiveness?
The rage piece for me was first really crippling. Like, I couldn't actually let myself feel rage for a really long time. It kind of just drooped into quite a dark hole and a depression. So that was kind of where it didn't exist really as rage, because rage comes with a sense of self-protection and a sense of something to fight for. And I think in kind of the aftermath of all of that, it was, yeah, my kind of felt sense of myself wasn't worth fighting for, and I kind of just like drooped into this space. The rage came years later. It came like 5 or 6 years later, like well into my breathwork journey. And one of the things that I'm really grateful for in terms of what I've inherited from my Indonesian side is that there is an element of understanding around spirit, and I have quite a lot of connection there. And the things that I felt weren't just mine, and like they were kind of in my journey of re-indigenizing and tracing back my stories and tracing back my own lineage. This wasn't just mine to hold. Like I come from a lineage of women who've been raped, and I come from a lineage of women who've been silenced and who have been silent. And so it's really interesting to attend to it from a space where there was a little bit of distance. And then that rage felt really good. It was like a really righteous rage, like in the sense that it was very, very mobile and kinetic, and I was able to get into my body, and I wrote a lot of things, and it's just like very expressive, which was exactly what I needed. And there was also a huge amount of tears, and also just like it moving through the body, which is very painful. The forgiveness part, it was really interesting because I was always quite astounded. I was still quite shocked by what had happened, and I still haven't spoken. He's like a good family friend that's not far away. Like, he's not like a person that doesn't exist anymore. And I've never spoken to him since. Like, and I've tried multiple times to get back in contact with him, but there's been absolutely no communication. And that was really frustrating for me, because I felt that some kind of discourse was potentially needed for me to feel some sense of closure or something along these lines. But I'm really grateful to have found that that's not actually what I need, and it doesn't need to come from him. I think the element of forgiveness comes a lot from the fact that I live in a mixed body. And I'll say a little bit more about it, because I'm a child of colonization, right? I am a descendant of exploitation, of capitalism. I'm a daughter of extraction, of theft. I'm the daughter of war. I'm the daughter of empire. That's not something that I can ignore or deny, right? And simultaneously being a child of the exploited and of the colonized, and yet I'm also a daughter of volcanoes and butterflies and hummingbirds, and I'm a daughter of dandelions, of rain and sun, and it's like all of these things already exist within me. And so for me to be able to do any of my work, ancestral, lineage, intergenerational stuff that's present within my body, I really needed to meet the perpetrator within. And that's that's hard. It's really, really hard. To be able to kind of call yourself these things, right? And still learn to love yourself is really hard, which is why I often think for white-bodied folks, it's really hard to do decolonial work, because I know for sure as a survivor, it was easier for me to love myself as a survivor because I'm innocent, right? I didn't do anything wrong. But it's so hard for me to love myself as a perpetrator because I did something, right? And I think that that's kind of the part of the conversation that we tend to not necessarily talk about too much, but being in a mixed body, you have to face that because that conflict is so present, and it's living in every single breath. It's in the way your blood moves around your body. It's the way that all the minerals have kind of formed in your bones. And it's like, it's something that is so within. So actually also attending to that part and attending to my inheritance in my white lineage and English lineage, that was deep forgiveness work. And then also includes that. And I think I think it's just been a journey of trying to learn how to transform that and to learn how to bring those parts of ourselves that we've been taught to exile and to shun and deny in. And as much as I would love to have done that with this person, and I'm not able to do, but I can do it energetically because I actually don't have any malice towards him. And it's quite interesting now that it actually just became part of my decolonizing process. Mm. Yeah. It's a whole lot of information. Sorry, Maya.
No, oh my God, this is my lifeblood. This is what I live for. This kind of answer is everything. Oh, there's just so much in that. Thank you. It is, you put that so eloquently, but not from this like intellectual level where it's just stuck here. Like I could feel it. You know, it's very moving. You brought it down to the body, and so much to say, but like the forgiveness part around the inner perpetrator, and you know how you've been working on that as a mixed person, as a mixed bodied person, because I guess there is no choice, but some people do bypass that and don't work on that. But you saw it as like a responsibility and like something that's really important to do. And I think the piece that people don't realize is, as hard as it is, but learning to love that part that is a perpetrator actually opens up so much more capacity to do the work that's needed on this planet. And it's not easy, because I think people think forgiveness is like that old Protestant, I'm just going to say crap, where it's like you get slapped on one cheek and you offer the other cheek. And like, if someone's harmed you, you like just erase the memory completely and just like let them keep hurting you and harming you. But that's not true forgiveness. True forgiveness does not require you to forget the harm. It requires you to actually look at the harm and to do the deep work to release that charge and to do, like release it on all levels and in the body and the energy body and the mind. But I think that's the part that people don't understand. Like when it comes to the word forgiveness, I think they think, firstly, it's too hard because it's like you switch it on and off. Like it's just, oh, I've forgiven you now. If you look at forgiveness through that lens, no one could do it because it takes years. It can take a lifetime sometimes. It's a non-linear spiralic process. And it's very nuanced and very complex. And when people think, okay, forgiveness is just forgetting everything and erasing all the harm and like loving myself, And then they mix it with like the perpetrator part. It's like, how am I supposed to do this? This is so hard. Like, I can't, there's so much shame. And I think what you've said is just really a beautiful doorway into that, because it's not bypassing anything. It's allowing love to enter even when there's harm and there's rage or there's loss and there's grief. It's like you can forgive yourself, and actually when you do, it allows you to do and hold so much more, because the shame of not doing that shuts you down, and then you get triggered, and then that's where white fragility keeps coming up over and over again. And so I'm really in awe that you have done that work of your own volition as well, because it's a whole other thing to do it when it's your choice. Like, you know, so thank you for doing that work.
You're welcome. No, it is
Seriously.
like, it is really funny. Like yeah, it's a really strange responsibility to have taken. Like, and I wouldn't be able to tell you like why I thought that was important, you know, at the time. But it was just something that it was like there was just gravity towards it, and it was kind of there was kind of no other way. I was kind of just moving in that pace and in that rhythm, because I wouldn't even be able to tell you, like, because I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, this happened to me when I was quite young, you know, and fortunately or unfortunately, it means I've been doing breath work for over a decade, you know, and it's like, okay, I don't think even at that age I would have been able to articulate like why I was doing these things. It's only with this kind of beautiful distance of hindsight that I can go, oh, that's what she was doing, you know, that's what she was trying to do. Because there were things that I did that I was like, this, I don't know why, but this feels good and this feels like it makes sense. So for example, like when I was kind of in that whole space of trying to forgive the perpetrator within me, I decided to reach out to an organization that works with formerly incarcerated people and offer breathwork to their community. And we ended up working together for years. And this was just like, and these are people who had a really rough time growing up. They were deeply seduced, reduced, induced into patriarchy. They had very few limited means of what it meant to love or be loved or be held or be cared for. They then chose to do things that were inherently criminal and terrible. Like there are some things that were heinous that kind of led them to be in prison for decades. And I'm here breathing with them and talking about their processes, right? And learning to love them so aggressively. Like actually the love that came through me was so it was so nourishing, because it taught me a lot, because as a breath worker and holding that space for these people and being like, oh my goodness, I can love these men. They were mostly men. I can really love these men. And if I can love these men, right, I can love the men in my lineage that have done this, or, you know, the men that in my life that have harmed me. And it was just, I don't think I would have been able to have any form of sense making of that at the time, but yeah, just being able to work with survivors and then also working with perpetrators, being able to work with like black and brown folks and white-bodied folks. It was just always a bridging, and always kind of seeing the humanity and dignity in both, and also seeing how we are all collateral damage of colonialism, how we are all so deeply hurt and like cruelly violated by these systems that, yeah, when we talk about it on an interpersonal level, of course there's harm, but there's so much historical harm and deep conditioning that these systems kind of infiltrate our every cell, that it allowed me to see things with a little bit more grace and to see the humanity of it all and let love guide it, and let love guide the path of what healing looks like. And I'm so grateful for those choices and the previous versions of me that went through that. And like, I can't really thank her enough, because it was pivotal to where I am today.
Yeah, what you experienced as a young person actually opened the door into the gifts that you brought into this world. I mean, it really was like a very clear path. And now it's your public work that you do. And I think that is part of decolonizing as well. It's like this conditional separation that we've had between who we are and the work that we do in the world. You know, it's like, it's so unhealthy. It is that fragmentation of like, well, who cares who you are and what you do and what you care about and what your personality is and what you love and who you love. It's like, you need to just go and you need to just like break your back, you know, to like support the elites, which we now know, you know, we're not going to go down that road, but we now know what they're up to and what forces they're feeding and what they're feeding on and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, your path is so inspiring because it's like your direct experience and what you cared about and what was important to you nourished that journey. And like, it's a direct consequence of, you know, all of that. And it's just so, it's just very inspiring. It's very, to me, it's very decolonized because it's very, it brings everything back into the whole, like, rather than the fragmentation that we've been kind of forced into and that you did go through, like all of us did. So on that note, one of the last questions I wanted to ask is, apart from breath work, what are the other ways in which you are coming back to yourself in a decolonial way?
Yeah. I think remembering is a really important piece that helps. And it's remembering things like remembering that the world is beautiful. Yeah. Right? Remembering that life is sacred. Remembering that love is powerful. Remembering that we can hear more than human things, right? We can talk to more than human things. That there's so much more about this world than we give it credit. And I think, and do as much as you can to help you remember, like, because this forced amnesia is so prevalent and it's so pervasive that it's really easy to forget. And so, yeah, I mean, my whole house is covered in little Post-it notes being like, remember this and remember this, right? And because it's so easy to forget, because we are so consumed, right? The like whiteness and colonialism isn't the shark and the evil thing and the dangerous thing that's over there. It's the air that we breathe in. And so remembering and doing things that help you remember, different rituals that help you remember, different songs. Like I'm so grateful for all of the artists that are making incredible revolutionary songs, spiritual songs that just help you remember, and remember being a kind of a nuanced word here, not just to, recollect and remember, but to remember, to bring back parts of yourself, to bring back members of who you were and members of your family back, to remember yourself back. Yeah, and get weird and whimsical with it. I have lots of little rituals and things that can feel really strange to some people, but like the more you do it, the less strange it feels, and yeah, all of those little things to help you remember how wonderful it is to be alive, even in the like glaring pain of it all. There is still so much beauty and there's so much love, and that love moves mountains. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I really don't have anything to add to that or to reflect on, because it is just such a lovely answer and so poignant. And And so I will end by asking you, what kind of world would you like to leave behind for your descendants? And by that, I mean anyone who comes after you, not just our lineage direct.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, this is a hard question.
I've ended on a hard one. And you can just give like snippets of it. You know, it doesn't have to be the whole thing because it is a big question.
I think in simple terms, a world where love is allowed in all forms, in multiple ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is the medicine, that is the remedy, allowing love. Because at the moment there are so many blockades and blockages within us and without us.
Yeah.
And this would be it.
Yep.
Hannah, it's been honestly a joy, a pleasure in so many ways, getting to know you as a friend, but also having this conversation with someone that, you know, I so resonate just so deeply with in this work. So I want to thank you for the work that you do. And I want to thank you for, the work that you do on an internal level, which is really bloody hard. You know, as a fellow inner worker, you know, when no one's looking and we're doing the inner work, sometimes you want someone to see it and they don't. And it is always quite hidden. And I want to recognize that in you, you know, that you do that inner work that isn't always recognized by the outside world, because it shows. And I also thank you for your frankness, your vulnerability, your honesty in this conversation, because I absolutely know that it's going to resonate with people and hopefully open some hearts and minds even more. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been, really joyful and surprising. It's nice to see what stories come out from different questions. So thank you for asking different questions.
Oh, you're welcome.